What more could he possibly have to hide?
Oh?
The game opens with you spying on your neighbour. Again, as if that didn't get you into enough trouble the last time. In all fairness, you don't seem to be playing as the same character, no longer a kid. You seem to be a young adult reporter. Certainly you're old enough to drive. Not necessarily competent though. Something else you're old enough to have, your own news station apparently. There's a tools board, a map, a suspect board. Mostly these act in lieu of a mission screen. From there, it's out into the relative open world of the town. The neighbour's house should be your first stop. Incidentally, the neighbour isn't home, but a policeman is. And once inside, you'll quickly notice major differences between this game and its predecessor. For a start, the policeman stays outside the house. At least at first he does. And this gives you some time, some breathing room to learn the layout of the ground floor and get a feel for the game itself and how everything works. Next, almost nothing can be picked up. A massive change. In the first game, almost literally everything could be picked up, in spite of the fact that 99% of it was totally bloody useless to you. Now, you just can't pick up that 99%. Speaking of, this leads to another massive improvement. Previously, if you moved something, or so much as bumped into it, or brushed past it accidentally, even without realising it, it would count as being moved and the neighbour would realise you were there. Really annoying that was. But that 99% can't be moved anymore. It's a lot harder to alert your pursuer by accident. Not impossible, mind you. area is open plan and has more than one explorable building, you could be tempted to go roaming. Not much point though, because until you've completed the current building, you can't get into the next one. You can go climbing in the treehouse, plus there are some collectibles scattered around, but that's about it. When you find tools, they go on the tools board. Keep an eye open for any additional items that might prove useful. You're trying to solve puzzles, while at the same time playing a game of hide and seek with a single pursuer, who will chase and attempt to catch you if they see you. They will also try to preempt certain moves you make by putting traps down in front of entrances and exits that they see you using often. Not that I let them see me all that often, that's probably why I only recall less than a handful of bear traps being set across the whole game. This is compared to the neighbour in the first game setting bear traps and automated cameras across every door and window frame that existed. Listening carefully is important. You won't always be able to see your pursuer. Learning the layout of the building along with the noises the floor makes when it's being walked on will ensure you're not caught by surprise as often. In the original, I spent way too long cowering under a bed right at the beginning in the bedroom. Where else would the bed be? But my point is, because I'd already played the first game, I kinda knew what to expect already. You can hide in wardrobes, under tables, not necessarily under beds, and even behind the sofa. It's worth searching for hiding places before you need them. Anything with a decent sized gap under them is certainly fair game, so long as you're not seen going under them, or the neighbour isn't being too sodding clever for my liking. No longer can you put your eye up to keyholes. Now you just look through the many gaps between doors and frames, or in walls, or anywhere really. This game's actually full of gaps you can just look through. The locations aren't massive, at least not for a video game area, or at least not what I think of as a video game area, but it is astonishing just how much stuff is crammed into them. After 4 hours, I did some exploring. I still hadn't found everything in just this first house. That's because not everything is in plain sight. There are a surprisingly large number of cubby holes and secret spaces waiting to be found. Keep an eye open for rooms whose walls or ceilings don't seem to meet. There are several buildings you can explore and uncover the secrets of. This has two effects. First, variety. Each location has its own puzzles, yes, but also a unique feel and layout to them. Second, it keeps the play area small, meaning the layout is easy to learn. And more importantly, your pursuer is never far away. One thing that did frustrate me, at first, was the floor. More specifically, what was on it. Okay, squeaky toys should have been obvious. Floorboards, less so. But the puddle of water in the bathroom... that's just annoying. I can't even see it when I know it's there. Also, the noise the puddle makes pales in comparison to some of your tools. Yet they never attract any attention at all. There are a surprisingly large number of shortcuts to find if you can spot them, and quite often you'll require the correct tool or be on the right side of them to open them up. Okay, so for my review of the first game, I seem to recall that I gave away a teeny tiny hint because I was very stuck at that point in the game, and I thought to myself, who would ever think of doing that? It happened again. So I'm about to spoil a teeny tiny little bit. In each of the houses, there's usually a bath. Makes sense. Press the action button against the bath and it turns the water on. And your pursuer comes running. Okay, fine. But when I reached the mayor's house, I wandered around for ages not knowing what to do next. Eventually I conceded defeat and looked up a guide on the interweb. Turns out the thing I was missing was inside the mayor's bathtub. This was particularly off-pissing to me for two reasons. First, as I've said, the game trained me to not interact with the bath lest I draw unwanted attention to myself. Second, moving around quietly requires you to crouch. And at that height, I couldn't see into the bath. So yeah, look in the mayor's bathtub. Other than that, I didn't seriously get stuck. I mean, there were times when I wandered aimlessly for way too long for my liking, but eventually a solution presented itself. I actually think this game's puzzles are easier than its predecessor. Not that I think the game is easier. The close proximity of your opponent makes getting anything done harder. Even searching has to be constantly put on hold, because they behave as though they have ants in their pants. No sooner have they sat or laid down, they're up again. And if you are caught, when you are caught, you're simply deposited back outside the building to try again, minus any items from the property you were still carrying at the time, encouraging you to ensure as perfect a run as possible. I also noticed that as you play through an area, the inhabitant, whoever they are, starts off in a small area, but as you make progress, they start to expand their search area throughout the entire building. And eventually, by the end, when you've almost solved all the puzzles and you're getting within a stone's throw of the final one, they start patrolling in the immediate area right around the final solution on purpose, forcing you to distract them. The only part I didn't like was the single solitary timed puzzle. Trying to time the puzzle while timing the pursuer, that was annoying. And one more thing, there is a mobile camera and a remote camera viewer that you can get a hold of, which is quite handy for keeping track of where your pursuer happens to be. But I placed the mobile camera inside the museum at one point. When I completed that section of the museum, I accidentally left the camera behind. When I got back in later, I picked it up, but the camera had become locked to that location, and somehow I was able to lose it entirely. My advice, don't place the camera in the museum. I like a good puzzle game, especially if it's creative. The puzzle designs are really clever. None of them are truly unsolvable, if you keep your eyes open and check everything. Every interactable, every cupboard, every wall, every bathtub. Your pursuer is a constant irritation, or they are to me. I prefer being left alone with the puzzles, but that doesn't happen. The upside of them never staying in place for long, though, is they never block you for long. There is an extra section to the game, through the tunnel. It's a different sort of challenge, but it's not necessary to finish the main game. It's a fun little add-on if you haven't had enough. As long as you're prepared to evade someone the entire time, this is a fun little puzzle game. Shouldn't take you more than 8, maybe 9 hours at a push to get through. Right, that'll do for this video. What did you think? Leave a like or dislike down below as usual. What did you think of Hello Neighbor 2? Have you played it? Are you going to play it? What did you think compared to its predecessor as well? Let me know down in the comments section. For those of you who can't get enough of my dulcet tones, you can always subscribe, ring the bell for notification, that's a separate thing. Or if you want to inflict my irritating persona on someone else, you can always share instead. See you next time.